Right. So I'm currently in the process of exporting that last vlog. It's going to be on YouTube probably tonight, and then this one will probably go up, and then hopefully in the near future, hopefully this week. Um, but I want to get one of the more touchy subjects out of the way, and I want to talk about where Beyond Limits project went wrong, and kind of what I think is the main reasons it didn't succeed to the level where I wanted it to be currently. Um, so let me back up to like about midway through my cross country trip. By the time I hit about Mississippi, uh, I was still very much in talks with my friend Derek, who lives in Minnesota. We had been good friends for several years. I can't even think, maybe 5 years at the time, 3 to 5 years, let's call it that. Where when I started doing my cross country stuff, he really started expressing that he wanted to do the kayaking across America. And so after a while, like naturally, that started seeming like the next best project. Like that's something we should do right after my trip. And so I talked with him here and there. And then when I got about halfway across the country, that's kind of where I solidified the idea in my head. And I said, you know, we can do it. Like we're gonna do it. It's gonna be the next thing. And BLP is going to move on with it, and it's going to be fantastic. And I think I Skyped with him one night in a hotel while we were traveling, and I told him that, and I was so stoked about it. And by the time I finished my cross country trip, I was already putting together a list of the stuff he's going to need for that trip. I was gathering like information on like what it'll take to get a kayak through the Mississippi River and all that. And I was putting together basically all the logistics. Monetarily, we had no idea where we were getting the funds yet, and we hadn't even begun to really look. So as soon as I finished my trip, like I was already like kind of foreshadowing that there was going to be this another grand project, and that was something that I was kind of like pushing to all my audience that had been following me on my cross country trip. And so a lot of people were kind of stoked about that. And so when I got back, we spent pretty much all that fall between finishing my cross country trip in the summer till the winter, basically, trying to look for sponsorships. Let's see. The first year, I had tried to contact a lot of like just random kind of out there companies that I knew were into the outdoorsy stuff, and nothing had come through except Cabela's. And the only reason Cabela's even gave a damn was because my friend Derek actually worked for Cabela's, basically like floor salesman, but he was able to talk to his brand partnership director at his local store, and then that put us in contact with corporate headquarters for Cabela's, which is in like North Dakota or South Dakota. And so we actually had like several phone calls with Cabela's, a lot of emails exchanged. I had a lot of like phone conferences or whatever, and like they really liked the idea. Like they liked the format of Derek doing a cross country adventure, as well as somebody like me following along with him and doing the documentary sort of side of it, as well as like weekly videos, daily videos, that sort of thing, updating social media frequently, giving people a heads up as to where he is, as well as kind of using it to showcase like their product line and all that sort of stuff to make it like sort of profitable for Cabela's. Obviously, they wouldn't do it for free for nothing, so that was a big part of it. And we thought it was gonna all be grand and work out, and then they came back with a decision saying, it's really not going to be a profitable endeavor for us. And so they said, I'm sorry, but unfortunately we can't do it. And that was pretty crushing to me. It was almost like humiliating because at that point I had talked myself up quite a bit. I had talked myself up to a lot of people, and so a lot of family and friends were kind of expecting that this was going to happen, and that's because we had been way too optimistic. Let me put it that way. We had told so many people that it was going to go through. Yeah, Cabela's, corporate sponsorship, all that. It was fantastic. And then it didn't work out. And so I was pretty embarrassed, to say the least. And so we started looking towards what could we do. Maybe, I maybe took like a month or two of mourning. And then I kind of pulled myself together and I was like, all right. So we were a little too headstrong, a little too gung-ho, and we thought we were going to put it all together within like 5 months, and that obviously was just totally unrealistic. So we spent the next summer and the whole next year basically trying to look for new doors and opportunities and things that might help us put the kayaking project together. And I kind of experimented with the idea of doing some fundraising, but I myself am not a great fundraiser. It's not something that I had any experience in previously, and so I didn't really know where to turn. I didn't know what to do, and so I kind of like toyed around with different ideas. I set up a GoFundMe, which didn't really do much. That's my own fault. I didn't really do anything with it. And we even talked to a bunch of companies. I went as far as to email, I think, 40 something different kayak companies, and only heard back from like 8 of them. And of those 8, I think I had 3 of them willing to give us a kayak, and one of them was willing to give us a kayak like for free. All they wanted was some sort of like social media partnership, and a lot of like brand partnership stuff within the project, showcasing their entire product line, which I thought was going to be fantastic. And to top it all off, they wanted to do it on their like super durable inflatable kayak. So that would have been like kind of like a monumental achievement in its own, as well as kayaking the entire Mississippi River. So that was looking really, really promising. And I was very real with that company. I told them, we had like a do or die date set up. I think it was either the end of January or the end of February. But I basically told them, I was like, look, we need to raise several $1,000s by this date. If we don't have it, we're going to cut it off there, because I don't want to leave you guys guessing until the last minute. Obviously, that's very unrealistic. So we told them, I think, February, and the goal was our launch date was going to be like the end of May or the beginning of June, something like that. So this was 2016. Yeah, 2016 was when this was supposed to happen. And so we just didn't really do a lot of fundraisers. I say we, but I didn't do a lot of fundraisers. I walked door to door in Stroudsburg on Main Street and tried to get businesses, but my approach just was not very professional. I don't want to say it was like disrespectful or uncoordinated, but yeah, I just didn't have like the right mindset and attitude and game plan going into it. And obviously no one was biting. No one was wanting to jump on top and do it with us. So that kind of failed, and I felt really pissy about that. I was upset. I was like, why can't I get a few people to throw me a couple bucks here or there, And I blame myself mostly for that. And that's kind of like where we ended up currently. Like that was a year ago at this point, and that really, really stung. Like, to know like 2 years in a row I failed to get my nonprofit going started making me think like maybe I'm not cut out for this, like maybe it's not for me. But at the same time, that whole winter, like as I was thinking about doing this kayaking thing, it started occurring to me that maybe the kayaking thing won't work out again. And I started trying to like do damage control already in my mind as to like where we should go after this. And so I started thinking like maybe smaller scale projects is something that I should be focusing on. Smaller scale charity projects, something to build up some notoriety, get my name out there. And I still know like there's local like people that I know I could be contacting that have more powerful connections than I currently have. And so that's something that I'm very aware of. So yeah, when that trip failed, I was really bummed out, and I probably should have just started working on those smaller scale projects. But at the same time, I was living with my parents still paying most of my bills on my own, but living with my parents and not really doing much towards the career path I had chosen, which in school I had gone for criminal justice, so I was trying to get more towards like a sheriff's deputy, sheriff's office type job. But even towards the end of college, like I was feeling more like event coordination, project planning, that sort of stuff was more something I should be geared towards. And so I started like working towards security, because it seemed kind of like a medium ground. I could get into security because it's easy. It's not a government job at that point. It's not fully diving into the career path that I wanted. So I got into security, and right away I got into a supervisor role, which is giving me the ability to put more like actual obtainable experience on my resume in terms of like leadership. However, I really had to like put BLP on the side and focus on my job and my career, if you want to call it that, for a while. And so this whole last year, that's all it's been for me, is just working nonstop. I was able to move into my own place, which is cool, but obviously I wasn't able to balance my time enough towards BLP to actually do something with it. So that's pretty much where we're at now, is like after the kayaking thing failed for the second time, I've been toying around with all these ideas for smaller projects. Recently, the local skate park has been something that's kind of been weighing on my heart, because I actually worked for Park Patrol for like a year, and I got to know a lot of the skaters. And now like one of our parks just got shut down because of vandalism, but it seems a little unjust the way they went about closing it. So that's something that kind of weighs on my heart, and I really want to do something to try and help the local skating community. And so that's kind of like where I'm at now, is like maybe helping these local community projects could be a way that leads towards the kayaking stuff and leads towards other projects, but I don't know yet. That's just where we're at. Again, it's all pretty much my fault that the nonprofits are not doing as much as I wanted it to. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe I can bring up some new stuff. Again, like my life is kind of changing. Like I'm finding more time to like do these sort of things. So who knows? We'll see.